I'll try to focus on just a couple of things. We know what's happening. We've already discussed what's happening under the hijab row. We also know that just a couple of months back, there was a child, 14-year-old child, Habib, who just went in to drink water from a tap and was brutally beaten for the sake of being video recorded. The person who's beating him, Shringi Yadav, actually wanted to make sure कि बढ़िया से दोनों चेहरे दिखें, so that they can show that they're bashing up a Muslim child, and also then circulating it, making it viral. And this young child, 14-year-old, had not been to school, and he had just come back after having worked with his father. And he very defensively said that he couldn't read that the board said that he shouldn't be going in to drink water. Whereas his father told journalists that no religion teaches anyone to beat someone if you are asked for water. So what is happening? This young man was an engineer. He was educated in an engineering institute. And this child did not get the fundamental right to his education. So what kind of education was being given or not being given? And I think 75 years after our freedom, we have to ask, what are these freedoms? Whose freedoms are we talking about? And what's happening now, which is even worse in terms of the divisions that we are seeing. So Maulana Azad holds, his work and especially his focus on social education evokes a special place in my own work because in fact, when I came to Delhi University invited me to join them. And when I came here, I came not just because there was some professorship available in the faculty, but I came specifically to a center called Maulana Azad Center for Elementary and Social Education. And I really like this integrating of elementary with social education. In fact, what's curious is that they were not talking about adult education so much. They were talking about social education, which was for everyone, which was really across the spectrum. And I think my own work, whether it was in literacy, in the literacy campaign, or then it's in elementary education, my own work really looks at education as a continuum. And what was interesting is that Maulana Azad, in his first press conference in February 1947, before independence, he is saying what is educational for national reconstruction. And he's saying that even though education, and we must recognize that education has led to a progressive outlook, but it has also created a small intelligentsia, separated, distanced from the mass of Indians. Important to understand what that means and what's happening today. He also said that it has led to fissiparous and divisive tendencies, and he's talking in 47, when they are actually looking at education to heal what has happened under partition, to heal the divisions of minds and hearts and lives. And that's what, for them, every education, 1948 Radhakrishna Education Commission focuses on that, and also says that the reason for India's poverty is that we have separated. We have arrogantly talked of one kind of education, which is education for, the mind, and we have talked of another education, which is education of the hands. And this manual and separation of the mind is what is really they're also, of course, alluding to caste, but this is what is creating and has been the reason of poverty. So this was the challenge, to break, overcome, transgress, thwart these kinds of divisions that were also being created, not just in society, but then reproduced in education. So what was this social education, which, he's talking about, and I think it has already been, the quote has already been given. How do you promote social solidarity and citizenship, especially for a democracy to function, but where people understand the social conditions of the country, the social conditions of others, and also, you understand, you take it through the emotions. Also, education and work has been discussed under Nai Talim and Bunyadi Talim. But what I want to focus is that here, craft, craft was being used as a medium to craft a different knowledge system, to craft a different society, to craft a society which actually broke away from the social stigma of vocation. And that's why it spoke of work, which was integrated. In fact, it was the medium of education. It was not vocational as today. And unfortunately, our current policies, in fact, are creating more of these hierarchies by giving skill to some people, separating them out. Delhi government schools do it, just separate out children, which they call as neo-readers or slow learners or not the talented, separating them out, pushing them into the open school. So there are nice routes that are set for them, even though they have a fundamental right to education. Before that, they're segregated physically. The syllabus given to them in Delhi government schools is a dumbed down version. They're not allowed to even read the NCERT textbook because our own students, our alumni, are teachers in these schools, and they are protesting about the way that they are being made to teach and address education for all. So this is the segregated way in which, and then push them into open school. Why? Because then their results will not sully the board results, which you want to showcase on the front pages of every newspaper. So that, plus what the policy has done in terms of further divides, in terms of who can get face-to-face, good quality education, who can pay for it, and the others get a distanced education. Distanced because it's online, it's distance education, and the policy accepts that, especially for higher education. And now it's really pushing for it to say that the gross enrollment ratios that it's actually trying to aspire to are going to come from online education and distance education. So what is this? How are we going to be now looking at these new hierarchies which are being brutally sort of slammed down our system, and even contradicting a right to education act? So what happens? How do we deal with it? Also, more importantly, I would like to look at, he gave a very passionate speech when he spoke about that there can be no seal put on learning and civilization, no territorial limits, no cages can actually bound what is learning and civilization. In fact, he said they are above nationalities. So what was this understanding, which today our own policy is now pushing something called Indian knowledge system, branding certain things, and we know what they are. We know the pseudoscience that might come in. We know the COVID that gets treated with cow urine, or, we know the IIT Kharagpur calendar. We know what is getting pushed, and also the kinds of histories that are being crafted. But in terms of this understanding that when Maulana Azad says these learnings might have originated in any part of the world, but they are part of a common heritage. They are joint property of all countries. It's like the knowledge commons that we talk of today, even when we talk in terms of environment, or we talk of science, or we talk of patenting, or we talk of fighting copyrights, we are talking of a knowledge commons. And this is what he is actually indicating then. He says, England cannot keep Shakespeare for herself. And were the dramas of Kalidas Indian nationals, or were just Kalidas was just a national? So, he's questioning these boundaries and talking of something that you have to really look in terms of a common heritage. And I would just like to read a little piece of what I had written some time back. During the COVID, there was a collection, a book being put together in terms of wisdom. And also I had written something in times of crisis. How do we look at the timelessness of wisdom for mathematics education? So it was interesting that when I was writing this and looking at some new deep histories that had come out just in the last year, quite fortuitously, there was something from anthropology that had really struck me, because that's what I was also questioning. And I'm quoting from what I had written, the empathetic and experiential premise of knowledge, as noted also by anthropologists, it comes from an education of attention, which is not looking at the world from a distance, not looking at the world from the outside, not seeing it as a globe, but rather from within. I had not, Saida had just read out the UNESCO speech. I had not read that earlier. And so it was interesting that, uh, learning, observing, caring, responding, being immersed in a spherical world and not looking at the world as a globe. The global image of the world, according, also to an anthropologist, it privileges dominant school knowledge over the knowledge humans have sought from life, by actively being part of the environment. Attention would mean that, we attend to, we engage with, and we listen to, and we are present for the world around us. So in this process of education, the attentional mind is tuned to work in an ecological rather than cognitive ways. And so in this, we might say that it actually renders othering into togethering. So this was, I was also trying to say that clearly a decentered vision of mathematics education cannot thrive in competing with, outpacing, or even in outsmarting others, which today that's what mathematics or technology is sort of making you do, where these individualized, customized ways of algorithms are being pushed in the name of education, and everyone is being told, whether at school level or at college level, that this is the best, see, this is specialized, customized for you, but not knowing that these algorithms actually have a history of bias. And a lot of work in technologies have told us that these algorithms can be biased, and in the process of customizing or individualizing something, you're actually going against the ethos of education, which is learning from each other, the togethering of looking at the world around you, looking at your own lives, questioning policies, questioning equity, questioning what education has meant, and constructing knowledge through that collaboratively as a social process. So social education also is sort of the premise of the learning process. Learning does not happen alone, neither staring at a board or staring at a screen. So when I just want to quote two lines from the textbook, the NCERT textbook that we had made in 2006, 2008, actually, it's this one in class 5. We were looking at, the chapter is called Sunita Williams in Space, but this was our one of our most challenging chapters, to look at the globe, because this is a very counterintuitive idea. Primary textbooks teach about the earth going round and about the earth being like a globe, about gravitation, and each of these words is a very abstract and very counterintuitive idea, because we never really see that. We never see what gravity means, but we keep talking about these words. So we had done that, and luckily Sunita Williams had just, she was coming in and talking to students. She had been through her experience, and she was explaining that to children. So we started this chapter with an actual true life conversation of two children, Shahamir and Uzaira, who are looking at the globe, and what they say is actually what all our research tells us, that when children look at Argentina and Brazil, the child asks, Shamir asks, but these people, are they standing upside down? How is it they don't fall off when they stand here in Brazil or in Argentina? And then asks that this blue water over here, how come the water doesn't fall off if the earth is really like a globe? And these are questions not asked by these two children, but this is part of transnational research on children's ideas and what is intuitive and what is counterintuitive, and how do you address these ideas. So we had used quotes from Sunita, because she's very expressive, and she also tells us what it means to be in this. We didn't use the word gravity, but we kept saying, and it struck me that for the first time I'd actually noticed that there was a cosmonaut, a person in a spacecraft whose hair kept standing. Probably one hadn't noticed it with the men, but with her and with all the photographs available, we saw that her hair keeps standing. And so that's how I took this idea to build the chapter around that and to question. And she also says, I don't need to comb my hair, it's always standing. Or how do I drink water? It's very difficult. Water is floating everywhere. So how you catch hold of these droplets and try and wash your face. So, using a more expressive and experiential way. This is someone's experience in this gravity-less or spacecraft, and how do you share that? How do you relate it to someone so that a person can actually also start thinking in that terms without throwing big terms at them? And Sunita says that the earth was so amazing and so beautiful that I kept looking out of the window of the spacecraft. I kept, really enjoying looking at this beautiful earth. Uh, she also says that from so far away, one can only make out the land and the sea. One cannot see the different countries. Division into countries has been done by us. All the lines on the maps are made by us. They are in our minds. I wish we all think about this. And so we ask the children, where are the lines really? And in fact, Shamir says that he thought that the lines were actually drawn between the states. They are drawn on the land, but Shamir is not alone. I have known teacher interns who suddenly, shook because they thought actually there were lines. When you cross from one state to the other, or you cross from one country, you actually will see a line there. So sometimes we really need to question, and this is what we had tried to do, to look at how people think intuitively, also to question without preaching, also to bring in from people's voices how we can think of these lines, and then children talk about it or try and understand. So this is what, reading some bit of Maulana Azad again today inspires me, and listening to the way Saida started off with it. Thank you.